Hello, we meet again. This time around, I will share comprehensible tips and tricks for descriptive writing. Mind you that this is the first part of this video. There will be a second part coming later. I really appreciate it if you can subscribe to my channel. And if you like the content of this video, please give me a like by clicking the like button and share this video with your friends. In this video, I will first talk about what is a descriptive essay, followed by how to analyze the question, and finally, how to write creative introduction. For SPM, there are two papers which are paper 1 and paper 2. For paper 1, we have two sections which are section A for directed writing and section B continuous writing. In continuous writing, there are 5 questions. However, there are only 3 main modes of answering. Basically, there are 3 main modes of answering, which are descriptive or expository. Descriptive, basically, you need to describe things. It can be in the form of stories or it can be in the form of expository, which is factual. And then there is also narrative or story. Basically, this is a story where you write stories with dialogue, with complicated plots, with climax, ending, like watching dramas. And finally, is argumentative. Argumentative is the most challenging out of the 3 modes. So which one is the easiest? The easiest choice obviously is descriptive essay. However, I'm not saying that it's easy. It's not easy, but this descriptive writing, descriptive essay is the easiest choice out of the 3. We'll see later as we go through this video. So, what is a descriptive essay? A descriptive essay is an essay that describes people, places, or events in such a thing that a picture is formed in the reader's mind. When you are telling someone about something, you need to be descriptive. You need to mention the details so that the other person can imagine, can can have the pictures of what you are telling. Then that is being descriptive. So basically, being descriptive involves paying close attention to the details by using all your 5 senses. So basically, we describe using what we can see, what we can hear, what we can smell, what we can touch, and also, in fact, our 6th sense, which is our feelings. Right. So the question for descriptive essay always begins or has the word describe in it. But of course, not all questions have the word describe in it. Some descriptive essay might not have the word describe, but when you read it and you can tell that the question asks you to describe, so that is a descriptive question. Now that you know what is a descriptive essay, let's take a look at an example of CW or continuous writing questions. This is taken from SPM 2018. So we have, as I said earlier, 5 questions for CW. So out of these 5 questions, which ones or which one is or which ones are descriptive essays? Yes, the first one is a descriptive essay. How can we tell? As I said earlier, the word describe. Is number 2 a descriptive essay? No, there is no the word describe there. In fact, the word discuss. Discuss tells us that it is an argumentative question. What about question number 3? Question number 3 is a story. Obviously, it says there, write a story. So this is narrative. What about number 4? Number 4 is how far do you agree with this question, with this opinion? So this one is also an argumentative question. So if a question asks you, discuss and how far do you agree, then that is argumentative. So let's look at question number 5. Imagine you went to a big sports event. Describe. So yes, this is also a descriptive essay because it has the word describe. Now we'll see how can we analyze the questions. For your information, since 2014, SPM questions have HOTS element. Before that, before 2014, CW question and in fact DW question were more straightforward and, well, I can say quite easy. I'm not saying that now the questions are difficult, but now the questions are slightly more challenging because it asks you more than one thing, right? Those asking for, some requirements of the question that you need to fulfill is what makes the question requires HOTS or higher order thinking skills. For CW, each question has more than one parts or requirements which need to be fulfilled. That's what I said earlier. If you have watched my previous video about a novel, I have shared with you how to analyze novel question. For CW question, basically the concept is somewhat the same, but we'll go through again with CW question later. If some of the requirements are not fulfilled, the answer script will receive partial treatment. English is not as, it's quite easy to score or rather to get marks for English. Unlike Bahasa Melayu paper, where if you don't answer the question and you will get terpesong with 0 marks, for English you will not get 0 marks if you answer the question. However, if you don't fulfill all the requirements, meaning tidak menjawab soalan dengan lengkap, then you will receive partial treatments, meaning your marks will greatly lessened, akan kurang sangat banyak. So you need to be careful, and that is why I am going to share with you how to analyze the question to make sure you understand what the question wants. So how do we analyze the requirements for descriptive question? So let's see, here are the steps. The first one is to identify all important keywords or phrases. The next step is to identify the given situation. And the third one is to list down what the question wants. Let's look at the question below. Describe a problem you once had while you were traveling. Explain what you did to solve the problem and what you have learned from the experience. This is from SPM 2018. So let's start with step 1, which is to identify all important phrases or keywords. The best way to do this is to first identify the phrases, important phrases. So here we have a problem you once had. So 1, while you were traveling, that is the second important phrase. And then what you did to solve the problem, and finally what you have learned from the experience. So here we have 4 important phrases. The next thing we need to do is we need to find important keywords in each phrase. So the important keywords are a problem, while traveling, solve the problem, and what you have learned. So these are the 4 important keywords from the important phrases we have identified earlier. Once we have identified all important phrases and keywords, we need to do the step number 2, which is to identify the given situation. Given situation is the focus of the essay. Think about what is it that you need to write about. So in this question, the given situation is while traveling, iaitu semasa traveling, mengembara. My dear viewers, sometimes descriptive question can be very specific. So you need to pay attention to words used such as while, before, after, during, when, and other words that shows time, specific time. So let's look at this question again. Does it have any of these words? Yes, it has the word while. So meaning that your description, whatever the problem that happens in your question, must happen while you were traveling, not before, during preparation, or not after you arrive at your destination. It has to happen while you were traveling. We are now at step 3, which is to list down what the question wants. By now, you have identified the given situation. So the other keywords, the other phrases that you have identified earlier, other than the given situation, are the requirements, or basically what the question wants. So in this question, what are the requirements? What the question wants? So we have a problem you faced, what you did to solve the problem, and what you have learned from the experience. Mind you that even the requirements can sometimes be specific. So look here, right? It has, the problem here, it says a problem. So meaning to say, the problem that you need to mention, that you need to describe in this question must be only one problem. You cannot give more than one, or else it would not answer the question. Next, we look at what you did to solve the problem. So does it say how many things that you do to solve the problem? No, it does not mention. So if the question does not mention how many things, whether it's plural or singular, if it does not mention, then it's up to you how many you want to mention. So here you can mention more than one solution. And finally, we have what you have learned from the experience. So basically this is about lessons that you learned. So you see, again, it does not mention singular or plural, which means that it can be more than one lesson. Now that we know what the question wants, it's time to write the essay. Any essay should have a good introduction, because the introduction basically gives the first impression for the readers. If the introduction is good, then the readers will be attracted to read the essay. So the interest of the readers will be aroused. So introduction is a vital part of any essay, because we can use it to impress and attract the reader's attention. When writing an introduction, remember to stay focused on the topic that will be discussed. So focus on the topic. The topic that will be discussed basically is the given situation. And for descriptive essay, as I mentioned earlier, the focus is the situation. Let's look at the previous question again. So describe a problem you once had while you were traveling. How would you normally start your essay? Be honest. How would you normally start your essay? How do you normally write your introduction? Well, normally students write an introduction like this. Last week, I went traveling to Cameron Highland, or you can mention any place. Or during the last school holiday, my friends and I went to Cameron Highland. It's true, isn't it? This is how you normally start your writing. When you see question about you went traveling, this is normally how students would start their essay. Well, my comment is, this is boring. Yes, this is boring. Okay? So how should you write an introduction? You have to be creative. How? There are many ways to write a creative introduction. So let me share with you. The first one is to ask provocative questions. What does it mean by provocative? Provocative meaning that the question makes the reader think, right? It makes the reader think about something. So you can ask provocative questions, or you can provide statistics. You can give percentage, or you can give basically you need to give statistic. And then you can also use quotes or proverbs. And you can also give general statement or background information such as definition or the history of something. So these are the 4 things that you can do to make your introduction more creative. Are these the only ways to write introduction? No, there are many other ways. But in this video, I will share with you only these 4 methods to make your introduction more creative. Let's check it out. Let's start with the first one. Ask provocative questions. When you ask questions, make sure your grammar is correct. So here I list down a number of phrases that you can use to start your question, such as what is. So for this one, what is, usually you are asking about the definition, the meaning of a term. For example, what is traveling? And then we have, do you know that? So this one is asking the reader whether they know about something, about the background, the history of something, for example. And then we have you? This one is asking the readers about their experience. Have they done it before? And the last one is, would you believe me if I tell you that traveling is blah blah blah, something like that. So this one is trying to tell the audience about a fact, about a history, about an information about something. Okay, you need to remember one thing. When you ask provocative questions, please do not leave out the question mark. A question without the question mark is not a question, and it will make your sentence considered as grammatically wrong. So let's look at examples for each of the phrases I gave earlier. So using what is, you can ask, what is traveling? Using do you know that traveling can teach you many things? Have you traveled to a foreign country? And the last one, would you believe me if I tell you that traveling is good for your soul? So these questions will make the readers who read these questions to think. So these are good provocative questions that you can use in your introduction. So depending on the topic, you can change accordingly with whatever topic is asked. Now we go to the second tactic, which is to provide statistics. So you can start with phrases like, how many out of 10 people? Okay, I mentioned here the word people. You see the word people is in brackets, meaning you can change accordingly. For example, 5 out of 10 students, 4 out of 10 adults. So the word people there, you can change accordingly to suit the question. And then we can also use percentage. So more than 50% of, again, people is put in bracket, meaning you can change accordingly to suit your situation. And The last one, you can write it this way. If you ask 10 people, how many would agree or disagree that something is whatever it is? Right. You may ask me, you may be asking me, how are you supposed to give statistics during exam? How would you know that? Of course, you do not know that. So what can you do? You can make up the numbers, but make sure it has to be believable, right? So let's look at examples for statistics. The first one is 7 out of 10 young people today love traveling. The next one, more than 60% of students nowadays have no interest to travel. Okay, remember numbers, you can write the number itself or you can spell it out. But then in this situation, because you are providing statistics, it is best if you write the number itself instead of spelling it. And let's look at the third example. If you ask 10 people, 8 would agree that traveling can change them. You can also use quotes or proverbs to start your introduction. How do you do it? The first way of doing it is you write a direct quote of, you give the direct quote. So you put it in the double inverted commas. And then you proceed with, this proverb or quote tells us that. So you continue that phrase with the interpretation or the meaning of that quote or proverb. The next one is you mention the name of someone. So give a name. For example, Albert Einstein once said that, whatever the quote is. Again, you might be asking me, how am I supposed to give quotes during exam if I don't know one? Well, you can either just keep, do not use, or you may invent, you may create your own quote. But remember, do not quote a popular person. Don't use big names like Albert Einstein, who else? Marie Curie or The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, big names with very popular quotes. Don't quote them if you don't remember what they say, which is related to your topic. Instead, you quote, you give a quote and then use names that look believable. All right? If you can't do that, skip this one altogether. This is the most challenging one out of the 4 tactics. Let's look at examples for quotes or proverbs. The first one is traveling is learning. This proverb, or is it a quote? I don't know. This quote tells us that we have much to learn from our traveling experience. Or you can simply say Dalai Lama. Who is Dalai Lama? Go and search on Google and you should find out who. Dalai Lama once said that once a year we should go someplace we have never been before. Of course, this is a real quote because I searched for it on the internet, from the internet on Google. But during exam, you can't do that. So you may create your own, or anything that is on top of your mind, make it a quote and try to, give a name that is believable, or simply write it like the first one. You don't need to mention who, right? It will look more impressive with a name, but then don't try too hard that it looks that you are lying, right? So avoid that. Finally, the final tactic, which is to give general statement or background information. So these are the phrases that you can use to start the sentences. Traveling is what? You give definition. Or traveling has become. So you show that what is the current situation about traveling. Or many people love traveling because. So this one you give background information why people love traveling. Let's look at some examples. Traveling is going on a trip for a certain reason, either alone or with companies. So this is a definition of traveling. And then we can also write traveling has become a new trend ever since Air Asia introduced cheap flight tickets. You see, this is like the history of things. Traveling wasn't really a trend because it was considered that something rich people do. But then nowadays, since Air Asia introduced cheap flight tickets, almost anyone can travel. Basically, that is their catchphrase after all, right? So yeah, this is mentioning the current trend or also the history of something. And then many people love traveling because they can leave their work stress behind while learning about other people's culture. This is giving reason why the topic is important. So I'm not elaborating much on general statement or background information because I believe that this is something that most of you are very familiar with, right? A good introduction combines at least two suggested ways or more. So you should combine the tactics that I gave earlier, at least two or three of them. You can use all four if you're good at it and you are able to. You may use all four, but I wouldn't really suggest to combine all four. I believe that three is a charm, right? So you can combine the tactics, the suggested ways earlier to make a good creative introduction. Why is it important? Because when you write creative introduction like this, you can make your essay longer. Imagine if you start your essay with last week I went to KL, to Kuala Lumpur or to Cameron Highland. Then how are you supposed to write longer essay that way? So by having an introduction, 4-5 lines of introduction, your essay is longer. And it also will make your introduction more interesting. So we have learned how to analyze the question and also how to write a good introduction. What are we waiting for? Let's try writing an interesting introduction for this question. So imagine you went to a big sports event. Describe what you saw, what happened, and how you felt on that day. This is another question from SPM 2018. So what was the first step to analyze the question? Yes, we need to identify all the important keywords and phrases. So let's see. We have you went to a big sports event, what you saw, what happened, and how you felt that day. So these are the important phrases for this question. Now for each phrase, let's look for important keywords. So the first one, a big sports event, and then what you saw, what happened, and how you felt. So step 2 is to identify the given situation. So what is the focus of this question? The focus of this question is a big sports event. Of course, this is a general requirement. It says a big sports event. So which sports event? What sports event? Is it football? Is it sports tournament? Is it tennis match? So you decide which sports event you want to talk about. So look again, is there any word, specific word that makes the requirement specific? Yes, the word a. So meaning that only one sport event. So let's try to write sample introduction. Do you love football? So I decided to choose football as the sports event. So we begin with a question. Do you love football? And then I continue with football is a game where two teams of 11 players working together trying to kick a ball into the opponent's goal guarded by a goalkeeper. This is a definition, right? So definition falls under background information or general statement. So this is basically a definition. Then I continue with, if you ask 10 people, 8 would tell you that they love watching football matches. So this is statistics. And we continue with, I also love football, and I will share here about my experience watching a football match in a stadium for the first time. So this last line, the last sentence, I have not shared earlier, because this is not the way to make your introduction more interesting. Instead, this last line is, you need to relate whatever you have talked in the introduction to your own experience. Okay, so let's try and see a different introduction. So sample introduction 2. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. This proverb tells us that we need entertainment in our daily life. So what is this? Yes, this is using keyword or proverb. To be more specific, this is actually a proverb. And then I continue with, to many people, football is an entertainment they enjoy watching while sitting back and relaxing after a long day at work. This is a statement, a general statement to support the proverb earlier. And then I continue with, 8 out of 10 people would tell you that they have seen a football match of their favorite team live at a stadium. So this is statistic. And again, I use a sentence to relate to experience, which is, I also have watched my favorite team playing in a stadium. Whew, that's a lot of things to digest in one video. It's okay if you still don't get it. Not everyone can get it in one sitting after all, so you can try and watch the video again. Writing creative introductions can be quite challenging without enough practice, because language is all about skills. Writing is about skills, and skills, to improve your skill, you need to practice, because practice makes perfect. So therefore, do a lot of practices. After you watch this video, look for questions for descriptive essays and practice to write the introduction, the creative introduction. But before that, of course, you need to practice to identify the requirements of the question. You need to analyze the question. That's the end of the first part of this video, descriptive writing. So what's next? For descriptive writing part 2 video, which I will post later, we will talk about planning the body of your essay as well as writing the elaboration. Stay tuned. So that's all for my video this time. That's all, folks. All the best for your SPM. Bye.